Welcome to this meeting of the Ebbsfleet Planning Committee. Apologies, we're starting a little bit late because of travel issues. We're all here now and raring to go. My name's Neil Cameron and I'm the chair of this committee, and I'm a non-executive member of the Ebbsfleet board. I am going to invite other committee members to introduce themselves in a second, but first of all, a very warm welcome to our two council representatives, Councillor Lee Croxton from Gravesham and Councillor David Moat from Dartford. So thank you very much for volunteering or being volunteered to serve on this committee. Yeah, anyway. We're really pleased to see you. David, I know you've come informally before, but I think this is your first meeting as a full member.
My goodness me, yes indeed. Thank you very much.
I'm now going to go round and let other members introduce themselves.
Good evening, I'm Penny Marsh and I'm an independent member of the committee.
I'm Valeria and I'm Vice Chair of the Planning Committee and a non-exec for Ebbsfleet EDC.
Right. And officers are...
Yes, I'm Mark Pullen. I'm the Director of Planning and Place at the EDC.
Shay Eade, Senior Planning Officer with the EDC.
Hi, I'm Michael Jessup. I'm the Head of Development Management at EDC.
And I'm Tim Sharp, I'm the Advisor to the Planning Committee.
Right. First of all, apologies for absence. I know we've got apologies for absence from Fred Marudas. Are there any others?
No, so just for completeness, the other independent member vacancy and the KCC vacancy with the Secretary of State for approval. So they are in the process, hence why they're here today.
Tell you something about that at the moment. Declarations of interest. Any specific declarations of interest other than the general declarations of interest? Any urgent items?
No, Chair.
Record of the meeting. For those of us who were at the last meeting, we've got the minutes. Can we agree that those are an accurate record? Yes. Good, thank you. And before we move on to the main item, I would like to record our thanks to two members. So we welcome to you. We look forward to two further members. And I'd like to thank, first of all, Chris Hall, who was an independent member for 8 years, since the very beginning of this committee's operation. And Chris, when Chris was first a member of the committee, there were 300 homes have been completed. We're now at well over 3,000. And I'd like to record particular thanks to Chris because his contributions were always insightful, I would say. They were practical, and they were clear. We really benefited from the fact that Chris had been involved in the planning process as a planner and also somebody implementing planning permissions. So he was always really good at calling us to account and saying, is that going to work? And really good practical points. So I will miss his sound voice. The other person who we should thank is Councillor Jordan Mead, who was the Kent County Council representative, who was able to contribute from his local knowledge and his experience of the local community. So thank you also to Jordan. So with that, I think we move on to item 5. And I know that those who are here in support know the rules, but I'll just remind you, they're all in our terms of reference, which I'm sure everybody reads day by day, but if not, officer presentation, which will be 10 minutes. I'd like to keep everybody to time. We've got no registered objectors. We've got registered supporters. They get 5 minutes in total. And how you divide it up is up to you. And Chris knows this because he's been kept to time in the past, or hasn't kept to time and had to be kept to time. And then after that, after we've heard from the officer, we've heard from supporters, any questions from members, and any clarification from officers, we'll then move on to a general debate, and then we vote on the item. So that's the process. So if you like to move up to the table now, please do. We're going to start with Shay, but
Yeah, which is just to leave the there for a moment. Sorry.
yeah, all right.
We'll just leave it at that and then
All right.
if that's okay.
Yep, fine. I just,
I think that's what we normally do. So.
yep, well, I thought we, thank you, Mark. Right, Shay.
All right, welcome everybody. The proposals before you tonight are made by Chartway Partnership Group and seeks permission for reserve matters for 162 dwellings comprising 32 1- and 2-bed apartments and 130 2-, 3- and 4-bed houses. And is made pursuant to conditions 2, 25 and 28 of the Eastern Quarries Outline Plan Permission. The application is located within Whitecliff, formerly known as Eastern Quarry, which forms a strategic development site within the EDC area, comprising 3 villages, Castle Hill, Alcadon and Ashmere, all separated by areas of open space. The master plan for Whitecliff embeds principles of sustainability in creating walkable neighbourhoods and a fast-track corridor which will run through the centre, providing efficient public transport connections to Ebbsfleet International Station to the east and Blue Water to the west, and the centres of Gravesend and Dartford beyond. The site is located in the north of Alcadon village, within a walkable distance to the Alcadon Market Centre. The phase follows on from Chartway's first development, which comprised custom-built dwellings at Alcadon Gateway. The site adjoins the major urban park to the west, the Alcadon Neighbourhood Green Park to the north, the education campus to the east, and the market centre and future community hubs to the south. The planning framework for Whitecliff is extensive and complex, whereby the principle of development is drawn down through a suite of parameter plans and strategy documents, as well as obligations from the Section 106 agreement. These inform the site-wide master plan, area master plans and design code documents which instruct and guide the reserve matters applications, as demonstrated by the flow chart on screen. Tonight, the proposals are at the reserve matters stage. In terms of access and layout, the proposals complies well with the layout and street typologies identified in the area master plan and design code for Alcadon. The north-south primary street creates a spine road for the development, providing access to the education campus and market centre to the south. Verges are predominantly 3 metres in width, incorporating regulated tree planting, and generous footways are accompanied by a 2-way cycle track, which promotes walking and cycling across Alcadon. To the north, a short lane-like cul-de-sac fronts the neighbourhood green with a positive facades facing onto the open space. The proposed development identifies 2 east-west tertiary streets, accessed from the primary street. The northernmost street provides a formalised arrangement with soft landscape verges on either side of the road. The southern street continues a similar form and function and creating a tight, intimate street which maximises tree planting where possible. Both tertiary streets provide links to the laneway along the western boundary, which relies on a narrow road width and shared surfaces. Also branching from the primary street are accesses to 2 enclosed courtyards, developing the design code requirement for an urban structure which pays regard to agricultural barn clusters inspired by Alcadon Farm to the north. Both courtyards provide pedestrian cycle links to the west and the major urban park beyond. In terms of car parking, the scheme utilises a number of parking typologies to ensure visual impact on the public realm is minimised. Parking for houses is largely provided as on-plot tandem parking situated with carports, with some on-street allocated parking provided close to the plots they serve. Furthermore, 6 relatively small private parking courts serve houses and 2 medium parking courts serve the apartment blocks to the south. Visitor parking spaces are spread across the site, and the overall number of parking spaces for the development has been assessed and is considered to largely follow the process endorsed by the approved parking management plan, while striking a balance between that and the sustainable travel strategy. 167 active electric vehicle charging points are proposed, ensuring all dwellings have the ability to charge an electric car on plot or within carports. And cycle storage is intended to meet the sustainable travel strategies requirements for dwellings and is secured by condition. As noted in the report, KCC Highways have reviewed the application and the majority of their concerns have been addressed. However, the width of the primary street at 2 discrete locations required further review and revisions to ensure buses and refuse vehicles can pass each other safely, and to achieve a gentler transition to the road geometry in terms of the wide bend in the north of the parcel. The 2 relevant set locations are highlighted in screen in red. Planning condition 3 is recommended to manage this review and secures revisions of plans in respect of road widths and verges, and this approach is supported by KCC Highways officers. Since publication of the committee report, the applicant has engaged KCC to develop the details relevant to condition 3. Plans have been shared informally with EDC officers and changes have been summarised in the supplementary report. Changes are shown to be minimal. No changes to the position of number of trees are anticipated in either location. And while KCC have yet to confirm the table plans are acceptable, the revisions have been worked up in liaison with relevant officers, and the level of progress is considered to give comfort to officers that the solution being brought forward would have a limited impact on landscape verges and thus place-making quality can be preserved appropriately. In terms of the wider landscaping, the proposals generally convey a high-quality design which has been well considered and enhances the street hierarchy. Hedging and ornamental planting to plot frontages is supported, and the use of native fruited species is welcomed as an appropriate reflection of Alcadon Farm's history. The rustic timber street furniture palette also works well to reinforce the farmstead concept, including social seating to courtyards and to the viewing platform home zone area. Overall, the site has developed an extensive landscape strategy that is high quality and works well with the layout to create a strong sense of space. Turning to matters of scale and appearance, the applicants have developed a design and character narrative derived from the Alcadon Design Code and EDC's Design for Ebbsfleet Guide. On the eastern edge, the form, detailing and materials takes inspiration from the analysis of Farningham Village set out in the Design for Ebbsfleet Guide. The western portion of the site is inspired by Kentish farmsteads, with buildings referencing traditional timber barns, farmhouses, workers' cottages and stables. The primary street shown here is characterised to the east by 2-storey semi-detached housing elevated in red brick and white weatherboarding on a repeating twin-pitched gable motif. To the west, the primary street 2-storey detached and terraced dwellings provide similar enclosure. Dwellings share the red brickwork detailing of the eastern edge. However, the black weatherboarding with contrasting white fenestration introduces elements from the farmstead character to bookend entrances and assist wayfinding. Along the western edge, the lane provides an informal street with a looser building line responding to the landscaped edge. Houses comprise larger, detached 2-storey dwellings featuring front-facing gables in red brick. A bespoke porch and front bay window in green provides a distinctive feature to this edge, while black weatherboarding units feature barn-hipped roofs, punctuate corners and bookend the pedestrian routes connecting to the farmstead courts. The east-west tertiary streets feature a mixture of 2- and 2.5-storey house types in detached and terraced forms and a formal orientation, and the enclosed courtyards feature 2-storey double-fronted houses typologies with long roof forms. Materials have been chosen to reflect traditional Kentish farm and barn buildings using a red multi-stock brick, red hanging tiles and black weatherboarding laid in a vertical fashion. The development includes 3 apartment buildings to the south of the site. Flat block B is situated in the southeast corner of the site. The design of this building is brick-led in approach and features projecting brick and simple soldier coursing. Black fenestration is complemented by green detailing to the balconies and entranceways, which harks back to the green materials found on Alcadon Farm. Flat block C and D have been designed as a pair of buildings fronting a consistent edge to the southern boundary. Together, they will provide enclosure to a public space, which will be brought forward between the site and Alcadon Hub to the south. The materiality of both buildings is inspired by the housings situated to the north. Vertical black weatherboarding is combined with simple red brickwork. Green laser cut balconies and green entranceways also pay homage to the green materials of Alcadon Farm. Across the apartment blocks, balconies comply with the EDC balcony design guide in terms of appearance and size, and balustrades have been redesigned to provide more variety, incorporating laser cut balustrading. The applicants have selected a palette of materials which reflects the character narrative as well. The inspiration from Alcadon Farm's buildings is strong and supports the creation of a distinctive and attractive development. Materials are well used to create rich visual detailings on all buildings and assist wayfinding. Final materials and detailed drawings of all architectural features is to be secured by condition to ensure high quality design and finish. The proposed development ensures delivery of 41 affordable homes, equating to 25% of housing as required by the Section 106. 8 houses are proposed for affordable rent, and Dartford Borough Council has confirmed they are satisfied with the proposals, noting it would directly address local need and help tackle shortages for larger family housing. Overall, the proposals are considered to deliver a high quality scheme which accords well with the Area Master Plan Design Code and is policy compliant. A range of unit sizes will be provided to meet the needs of a variety of occupiers, all with access to private gardens or balconies. The scheme scores well on the Belding for Happy Life assessment, achieving 9 greens and 3 ambers. It is 100% compliant with the nationally described space standards. 36% of units meet Part M42 of building regulations, which is in excess of the 25% required by the Outline Planning Commission. The development incorporates solar PV panels to all housing and apartment blocks and air source heat pumps to all houses meeting current building regulations, Part L. In conclusion, this is a positive scheme which will deliver high quality homes, contributing to an ongoing development of Whitecliffe and Ebbsfleet, and is therefore recommended for approval subject to the conditions detailed in the committee report and as amended by the supplementary report.
Thank you very much. Okay.
That's my timing now.
But it's a very informative and very useful illustration. So thank you very much for that, and timing spot on. Now a chance for supporters to take up their 5 minutes. So if you'd now like to come to the table, you're very welcome to. If you could introduce yourself while you're comfortable.
Good evening, Chairman and members. Thank you for the opportunity to address the Planning Committee this evening. My name is Julia Moat. I'm Planning Director for Chartway Partnerships Group. We are a regional partnerships-based house builder and community placemaker, specialising in the delivery of high-quality, carefully selected residential developments throughout the South East. We have a track record of successfully delivering housing across the Garden City, most recently, as Shay noted, through the successful completion of our custom-built home scheme at Alkden Gateway, and previously several phases of affordable housing within Castle Hill. As reflected in the committee report before you this evening, our development proposes a mix of 162 market and affordable homes designed to respond positively to the overarching requirements of the Area Master Plan and Design Code and key EDC best practice design guidance. We've worked closely with the EDC planning and design officers and other key stakeholders in developing our proposals through pre-app engagement, design review, and continued evolution of the scheme up to determination. Our proposals include the provision of 25% affordable housing to be delivered as a mix of shared ownership and affordable rent 10-year houses and flats, all of which will be constructed for our local registered affordable housing provider, Moat Homes, who have a successful track record of delivering affordable housing throughout Ebbsfleet. Members will be aware that our affordable housing proposals have the support of the local housing authority and notably have been tailored throughout the planning process to include larger 3 and 4 bedroom homes for affordable rent, meeting a demand currently being experienced in this part of the borough. Our Chartway vision and values of creating high quality, sustainable homes for everyone has firmly been established within the scheme before you this evening. The development has embedded sustainable principles as an integral part of the design process, with new homes to be constructed to meet and exceed current building regulations. This will be achieved through a combination of air source heat pumps, PVs and EV charging infrastructure installed throughout the development, in addition to high levels of thermal efficiency through our design and construction process. The scheme includes attractive and distinctive hard and soft landscaping, through considered use of varying surface treatments and native planting, all designed to integrate the development into the network of surrounding public open spaces, which include the Alkden Barn, the major urban park, as well as recognising the site's immediate connectivity to the education campus, the emerging market centre and surrounding transport links. As set out in the officer's supplementary report, design alterations have been made to the Spine Road since the publication of the report to address KCC highway advice. The changes maintain the same overall landscape verges, including the extent of tree planting, but crucially have allowed buses and larger service vehicles to pass freely in either direction to the satisfaction of the KCC. I'll now hand you over to Olivia, our project architect, to talk you through some of the architecture.
Yep, I'm Olivia from BPTW, and we've been on this journey with EDC, coming to various workshops to discuss the design narrative and how we can expand on the design code's allocation for the site to be within an Alcadon heritage character area. So we've been looking at, as Shay's been through, the narrative of responding to the farmstead and the local heritage of the Alcadon barn, bringing through detailing materials into the design. And then we've also been looking at how the formation of the architecture sits in plan and the clusters of homes around central shared courtyards. And then also working through the design of the primary street and the western edge, enhancing the major open park, and then the backdrop onto the education campus.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. So do members have any questions which they would like to ask?
This is very nice and very attractive. And I'm sure the people who live in the original are pleased with this. One of the questions I had was on sustainability.
Yes.
And it's a silly question, but I'm very pleased to see that you're incorporating things like cells. Is that geared into batteries or is that going into this feed?
It's feed into the house. So yeah, we haven't proposed batteries here, but we've got so through the scheme design process, we've looked to incorporate sustainability. We're not, heating is non-gas basically, so air source heat pumps and electric heating to flats, and that's generating electricity through PVs and electric vehicle charging infrastructure.
People would be able to put batteries.
They could, yeah, absolutely.
And so, what is the build type? Is this a timber frame or is it?
Yeah, so houses are timber frame, yes, which again increases the thermal properties of the building.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
Yes, can I ask a question about infrastructure, transport links, maybe fast track and the like? What are communications, particularly for those people who may not have cars?
Yep. So in terms of when we've thought about our layout and how we develop this parcel, very much about pedestrian permeability, pedestrian cycle permeability. You've got some great assets around the site. So you've got fast track just to the south of us. You've got the Alcadon Barn, Heritage Park, major urban park. So it's very much thinking about the use of non-car as well as designing in spaces for the car. Things like ensuring houses have got cycle parking spaces and so forth. So.
Yes, of course.
Thank you. One of the big things, obviously, the Dartford is always very keen to know about is dustbins.
Yes.
And I know that you've done work to make sure the access. Where do people keep their dustbins?
So for houses, dustbins are within the gardens. So effectively, you've got a bin storage area in your garden. Then on a refuse day, that bin is pulled out, and all of the houses have access to rear gardens through a series of pathways and side gates. And then for flats, they're in bin stores, either within the building or attached to the building.
Yeah, I mean, the bin stores in the actual flats, will they be separated out to recycling and non-recycling?
Yes. Yeah. So they basically have separated containers for recycling, not recycling.
Probably that would have a great difficulty in making sure people put the right stuff in the right bin.
Part of the education, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, but that's fine.
Start.
No, I know. It's just we obviously are very keen to make sure that the runs for our people,
Yes,
they don't get stuck trying to get vehicles in and out. What I could see, there was a lot of room to move about.
Yeah.
As long as people don't start parking in the way.
the development. So part of the planning process, we produced tracking plans that show how refuse vehicles will be able to negotiate those streets.
No, that's fine. That's
Okay.
Penny.
Yeah, can I ask, just clarifying the western edge, so the yellow, Will cars be able to drive along there? Will it only be access to the properties, or would it be a through route?
It will be open. Cars will definitely be allowed, so that is a road to drive down.
Right.
It's not as wide, so the strategy, the street strategy is effectively you've got wider streets as you draw people in, and then you've got a looser edge on that western edge, just reflecting the location to the major urban park. It will be publicly open, it will be accessible, but ultimately, you know, predominantly for residents who live there, but ultimately it's also a key connection through to the major urban park. So there will naturally be a footfall of people coming through the development to get to that.
Yes,
urban
and that's what
park.
I was thinking, you know, it's what that's going to look like.
Which is hence the sort of arrow kind of locations with the key linkages in.
Valerie.
A few questions as this layout is actually up. It doesn't actually show, but I've seen on the presentation that where we have the shared ownership is all towards the south, but clustered together, and then we've got the 6 affordable rent sequestered at the northern end. But it's not really integrated, you know, it's not really a mixed and balanced community in that sense, is it? Essentially, it's an entirely private development with the affordable and social literally on a limb at either side. Are you able to completely?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think, you know, we have tried hard to integrate. So the scheme is tenure blind. If you look at it, you know, once it's built down that street, you wouldn't notice an affordable from a private unit. So I think the idea is it's a seamless, you know, if there isn't an affordable area and there isn't a private area, it's all integrated. I think in terms of, it's always been quite a tricky site to develop because you've effectively got, it's divided into 2. You've got a spine road, the main thoroughfare through the middle. You've got a parcel to the school side, to the eastern side. I don't feel that we haven't parcelled up an area and gone, that's the affordable area, that's the private area. I think we have worked quite hard to try and integrate that as much as we can. We've got a natural area where we've got flats down at the south, but that's an intentional thing there because actually the area to the south of the site is transitioning in towards the increased height of the school and then towards the market centre. So that was the natural place for flats to be situated. So hopefully that sort of clarifies our sort of thought process and thinking there, really.
Well, it clarifies some of it, particularly in terms of the architectural design, so to speak, but not necessarily in terms of the social component. But nonetheless, thank you for the explanation. The other thing that I wanted to ask, and I do really like the street scene touch, very attractive architecture, and you show again some lovely CGI images of these farmsteads, the courts, but actually there are quite large just parking areas, and there are no images of that. And indeed, the DOCOS also says, well, what about lighting, safety, and so on? They, you know, some of them are big, and again, on the southern end, you've got 20+ parking spaces, and I can't believe that they would be particularly attractive or safe places, to be honest. Particularly on the southern end.
Yeah, these sort of blue highlighted areas. Yeah, I mean, working with Shane, the team, in terms of developing our concept, you know, it's fair to say we have had some feedback, and there's a condition requiring further details of the lighting around those parking courts, and indeed, you know, there's some requirement to look at screen walls and landscaping within them. So we have tried to get them to work. It's a balance here because actually the reason you've got parking courts is actually because the density really sort of ramps up at the southern end of the site. And actually to get that higher density, you have to then have a rear parking court to get your parking in, because otherwise you follow a rhythm of house parking, whereas actually on that western side of the street towards the southern end, you've got a lot of houses to increase the density because it's transitioning into the market centre high density area. So naturally you do end up with a rear parking court. But yeah, I think we've worked to try and alleviate any concerns there, and we'll certainly be looking at lighting again through the condition submission process.
Is there any chance of any landscaping?
Yeah, and indeed landscape.
Really
Yeah.
soften those.
I don't know, Shay, if you.
I think that landscaping has been dealt with in those particular areas for the large car parking courts. It's not shown on this plan because there's not really a good integrated plan to show you landscaping and the develop together. It's just not come forward in the packs for me to have to easily put it up on screen. But yeah, the landscaping has been looked into detail and been improved during the course of the application. Particularly for those large courts serving the apartments to the south. The smaller courts, there's 6 smaller courts that are actually shared majority by 3 to 6 dwellings, which is kind of in line with a small private space or a communal space for those residents. And although we would have preferred to have fewer, I think that they are well elevated. We've got a condition to improve the boundaries of them too. To make sure that they are all brick built and not left over as timber fencing that can easily be damaged with vehicular movements, etc. So I think landscaping is held well, and as Julie picked up, a landscaping requirement to boost lighting in those locations is secured and agreed.
I think, yeah, both lighting and landscaping will help a lot. And the other thing, I think, it's just because the scale is so small. How do people get from the parking space or from the other way around, from the house to the space? It's not really clear. It looks as if they go through their back gardens, but I can't believe that's right.
There are fogs on those or each one of those smaller parking courts.
Yes,
is accessed via a fog, under a fog access to kind of conceal them from behind. So they would come out and then come to their front gardens. I think some of them have got rear gates in that location, but not all. So some of them would have to come back round to their front entrances.
And will they use them then? Don't want them to particularly. Carrying lots of shopping, or you've got your child's buggy, or
I think
disabled.
Yeah, I think people will use it. It's as I said, it's a design response to try and get to try and increase that density in that southern parcel, and it's a product of that really. If you had a lesser density there, you'd end up with house car, and it's that we've been encouraged to move away from. So
also hindered somewhat by the area master plan design code requirement to not have direct access at a certain point. So you have direct accesses onto plots, but I suppose that's not really, it's limited to the east side, to reduce those number of crossovers going onto dwellings. I think we would have had more issues with KCC highways if we had all on block parking in that way to the western side as we do onto the east. So it has come up with a design solution for those. I think that the distance to those rear courts is not significant considering, say, the number of dwellings that are being served by them, the smaller ones. So I don't think that they will be underutilised locations. And the scheme is compliant with the parking management plan approved for Castle Hill. So delivers on that point.
Yeah, I do understand the trade-off between the more condensed parking spaces and getting additional units on site. It does really flag up though the importance of having really good lighting, and not least so that people can walk safely from parking space to their home.
Yes. Yes.
Sorry.
Okay.
Which is really around the highways and the issue of whether two buses can pass, which remains unresolved, and yet appears to be sort of ongoing debate because it was in the first consultation, the second, and it's still a live issue today. I mean, are you confident that you can resolve that and accommodate it?
Yeah, so since the latest round of highway comments, and indeed the report was published, there's been a fair bit of correspondence back and forwards between us. It's actually the master developer's responsibility to deliver that spine mode. They're working closely with us to agree the design. So there's been quite a bit of backwards and forwards exchange. I think we're at that point where highways are happy in principle. Ultimately, the backstop here is there's a condition to have that final sign-off process. But ultimately, the road corridor is quite wide, and it's where you get a bend that you need some extra space within the road to allow two larger vehicles, a bus and a refuse vehicle, to pass each other. That has been addressed in terms of a drawing that has gone back to highways. Highways have accepted that in principle, but the backstop is there is still that condition process to satisfy. So EDC can be happy that there's a condition sign off where highways say yes, absolutely, it's fine. I think the key point as well is, as Shay highlighted, is that actually by slightly amending that road corridor, we're actually not reducing trees or the sort of overall design ethos of the scheme. So yeah, I'm confident it can be resolved, and it will be satisfactorily resolved.
No,
That's good, thank
anything
you.
else?
No.
No. And I note that on landscaping, there are two suggested conditions on landscaping, and there's a condition on lighting. So we'll have to consider that, or the officers will have to consider that in due course. Any other questions for the supporters before we? Well, thank you very much indeed. And I'm going to ask you to leave the table, tell them there, and I'll be doing the right thing. We've now got a chance for general discussion and for is there anything else you'd like to say, Mark?
No, it's not happy. Let's crack on. Yeah.
Can I just ask one thing, Jay? We've got this condition which requires the developer to submit further plans of the road layout so that they can get it wide enough for vehicles to pass. Are you satisfied that that isn't going to disrupt the landscaping scheme? Because it shows a series of trees, and if you can't have trees in that bit, is there going to be a gap?
So as Julian touched, there has been conversations, and I was flagging up. So this is the drawing that shows you the two locations, the parallel crossing and the northern bend, where those points where it's critical. And the informal plans have been provided. I'm showing you a zoomed in locations, and you'll see the difference in the changes. This is to do with the northern bend and the geometry of that smoothing out. Essentially, on the left-hand side is the approved plans as set out in the conditions, and to the right is the indicative plans that have gone to KCC or been worked on with KCC. And you can see that there's a reduction. Basically, rather than the verge to the left-hand side undulating, it's been smoothed out, but no trees would be affected in that location. And to the right-hand side, there's a reduction, but it's not significant or just would disrupt the landscape verges in those locations. And then the second location in the parallel crossing, these are the plans for those. Again, approved plans are on the left, indicative plans for condition sign-off are on the right. And this is where you are just focused on the left-hand verge and the reductions that are happening there. It basically tapers from 3 meters down to 2.60. Again, no trees are anticipated to be disrupted by those changes on there.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you. Right. What do everybody think? Conclusions. It seems to me that it's as you said, Valerie, before, that it's a well thought out scheme in terms of the detail, the architectural form and materials, but there are some, I would want to be reassured that when the landscaping scheme comes in, the points that you've raised are met, particularly on the parking arrangements. I can see a benefit having the parking in parking courts because you don't see a sea of cars, it's behind the buildings, but then it's got to be well designed. Other views?
The whole problem with parking courts, as you say, if they're dark and dingy, they're dangerous. These, I think, are going to have appropriate lighting. The other aspect that's not been mentioned up to now is whether or not they are overlooked by buildings. So from what I could see, most of them are, and that is one of the things that we used to look at when it came down to safety in these sort of arrangements. I agree with you with reference to the landscaping. It softens the whole thing down. Safety is an issue, and I know what I was saying about the fact that people with heavy shopping and children will probably stop at the front, unload them, and then take the car out the back, which will mean that there will be cars which is just not necessarily parked, but waiting to be parked. However, I do also think there will be people that will go to the back and walk there. Unfortunately, human nature is such that we can't actually determine what people do until they start doing it. The whole danger. But if you can plan that out, that's great. I listened to what you said about the another expression is socially seamless. I have to say that if you had put all your social housing in two blocks at the bottom, I would have been concerned. I'm extremely pleased to see that there are larger properties, and 25% is quite phenomenal. Have you seen that? The greater that we haven't seen it after. So that's very good. And the fact that these are larger properties, which is something that nobody seems to be doing. People putting affordable houses, nobody needs them. You don't want flats, you want houses. And the fact that they do all look very similar along that line, I agree, they're not paper potted, but they are still attractive and you can't tell the difference between. I like it, I have to say, and I tip a hat to the actual look at this. It does. I like the darker wood because that does reflect the whole question of barns and shed. So on the whole, I'm quite impressed with it. I think there are obviously issues, and you're going to have problems. I always think that if two buses are going to come next, why don't one stop and let the other one go through? That's Kent. Let's see if we can scrub them both. I know that our waste wagons have got through gaps that you would not believe, and I expect yours have as well. But yes, I would hate to see this thing hung up on that, but I'm pleased to see how much work has been put in to actually alleviate that.
Any other views? Yes.
Yeah, I'd say that looking at it, I like the village feel. I think the mixture, and if there is a link, bus system running through that, then that's going to be very important. Particularly, again, 25% social housing or elements is, I think, very positive plus.
I think on fast track, which will be down at the bottom, the southern end, the EDC board have been pushing for fast track to come sooner rather than later and to go all the way through to Blue Water. And there are current discussions with Kent County Council, because I think it must be frustrating. Penny lives here, but to see the fast track route, but there aren't fast track buses running on it. So I think
few children on
very
scooters.
Yes, very conscious of that and the importance of it. And I think that's it's not something that it is relevant to this scheme, but it's a more general, wider concern. Any other thoughts, or shall we move to make a decision?
It does score well, doesn't it, on lots of other design sort of indices, really, whether it's the the healthy living, and solar panels and air source, the heat pumps, and all sorts of things. Actually, I mean, I'm despite my opinions, I also like the fact that we've got 25% affordable housing and the dual aspect, and that's part of the happy housing standards, isn't it? To have dual aspect, it really improves your enjoyment and quality of life, I think, particularly in apartments. So there's lots of things to commend.
Yeah, I think I would agree with all that's been said. I mean, it's slightly disappointing that there aren't so many compliant houses with sort of accessibility, but I do know that it's a sloping site, isn't it? And that's, that's difficult for lots of reasons. I still like podium parking if we could do that, but also I know that has its restrictions. But that said, I like the green detail. I like a lot of the way it's presented.
If everybody's had their say, I'm going going to propose that we accept the officer's recommendation. Sorry,
Somebody should supplementary.
subject to the supplementary report. But I did notice that when Shay presented it, she referred to the supplementary report. Otherwise, I was going to make that reminder.
I think she should.
So the officer's recommendation, subject to the supplementary report, and in particular, the supplementary detail on conditions. Anything else, Mark? That
I think it's
good. Well, I propose that. And I suppose, does anybody? Well, we don't. We can have a formal vote on it. So those in favour? Anybody? There's nobody left to be against. So that's unanimous. There we go. Thank you very much. Now let's move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the EDC validation checklist update. And Mark, are you presenting this or Michael?
It's going to be me, please. Yeah. Thank you, Chair. So you won't need a 10-minute timer for my intro. I'll keep it quite short and sweet.
So you're certainly not getting 10 minutes.
Okay, so the report before you is seeking approval for update to the EDC validation checklist. So the validation checklist is a document, it's an important document for development management purposes because it sets out the information that's needed for planning applications. So it's used by officers, applicants and agents when preparing applications during pre-app discussions and also when Julia's registering the applications. The NPPF requires us to publish these and it also requires us to keep them updated. The current one has been updated for a few years, so it's time for us to review it. So officers undertook a review earlier in the year, so the whole team kind of fit into things. The changes that we were proposing were mainly presentational changes. There was no substantial new content being incorporated into it. And we did sort of beef up some requirements for design and access statements, particularly with the sort of design quality retention issue that we've been experiencing. So there's some stuff in there around requiring schemes through a design access statement to identify aspects of the scheme that create that sort of character for distinctive character, that narrative. So there are key elements that we understand we can secure and try and isolate that from being value engineered out. So it's a bit more of an emphasis on that. And it reflects new ways of working, removing the requirement for hard copies of everything to be coming in with applications as well. So more electronic based as well. Off the back of that, we went out to a short public consultation. We had some feedback mainly from statutory consultees. This was mainly what I would call technical type stuff. So it was terminology being used. It was the latest guidance. So there were some updates to that. We'd have a comment from the Beam Residents Association regarding details and application forms, which we've addressed. And no comment. And from the local developer regarding the lighting requirements, we have changed a little bit from experience and from input from our lighting consultant. So moving to the recommendation is for approval. There's a revised recommendation set out in the supplementary report. We updated a couple of the legislation, the legislative references that were in the original document to make them current. So the recommendation is as per the supplementary report, which is for approval, to publish the report online, but also to delegate authority to the Director of Planning and Place to make any future changes, factual changes that might come about prior to the next formal review. This will be things like updates to local plan policies, updates to national planning requirements with things like biodiversity net gain coming ahead, and also the sort of imminent, we expect adoption of the Dartford local plan. So it's just to give us the ability to change the document without having to come back a formal process until the next couple of years we review it again. So recommendation as per the supplementary.
Thank you. And we might have a new MPPF very soon.
Very soon. This week.
Who knows? Thank you for your work on that. Has anybody got any queries on that, Valerie?
Just a curiosity, really. You've got the 13 consultation responses back, but not from Dartford or Gravesham, and so much of the validation relates to policies, doesn't it? Councils and the like. Is it
Or
is it all just happy?
Or even the town council, to be honest with you.
No.
I noticed that as well, but I suspect your planning department was busy as hell.
Yes.
But I think that when they actually get the local plan settled, that will probably be the ultimate they'll be linking in with you anyway. But it's a very good point, and it's disappointing because even if they just said yes, we quite agree or something like that, I don't know.
I think there's a broad element of consistency across these documents. Every council produces them, if the local authority will produce them, but they're all there. There's nothing particularly, I would say, particularly bespoke to Ebbsfleet. It is the usual type of stuff. I mean, there's a few areas where we've elaborated a little bit to try and maybe address certain issues, but I don't think, the evidence of comment from Dartford and Gresham isn't a problem. The local plan references are there really just to kind of reinforce the requirements.
I think the thing is that with Dartford, because the local plan covers this particular area anyway, I hate it. I'm not trying to defend these people, but that may be some reason behind it.
But the purpose of this, as I understand it, is to tell people who are making planning applications what they have to do before they make the application, which makes it easier for them and easier
for you,
for us. And so it's a communication and clarification.
Yeah, it's about having the right information to make decisions sort of robustly and also in a more timely manner as well, and maybe avoiding certain conditions that you might otherwise need if you didn't have everything up front. So
that was my understanding. It was really, you're right, the point about consistency. So, if you're an applicant and you, say Dartford, forgive me, but, apply in an area that's outside of the red line, so to speak, it's potentially confusing if the validation requirements are fundamentally different, which is what I was trying to flag.
I think that's actually a very good point, because of course a lot of people are confused about the pertinence of the EDC and
a sort of administrative boundary in the same way.
That's right, and you suddenly they think they're in Dartford, but it's actually a planning activity that can come into especially around sort of Green Hive and Swanscombe.
Yeah, we do occasionally get one that we need to send back and say you've submitted to the wrong authority. So
I bet you're glad of that. Somewhere, that's their point.
These are broadly consistent with Dartford and Graham.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, shall we accept the recommendation and thank the officers for doing this work? Thank you. Right, next on our list is planning activity, item 7, and that, Mark, you presented
Yeah, I'll
that.
just say a few words to that if I can. Check with you. So the usual update, this covers the period, so Q2 covers the period July to September this year. So team are doing very well. So thank you to them for that. It is fair to say, I think that as I think I've reported previously, we do have an awful lot of bespoke timescales agreed with developers here. We work very closely with the developers to agree project plans, extension of time agreements, and there is a real role for them to play and a real value for that. But it does then mean that we do have a relatively high proportion of decisions going out against those types of agreements rather than necessarily sort of fully against the sort of the initial sort of 8 and 13 week period. I think we are expecting some announcements from government at some point around possibly changing rules around some of performance monitoring and extension of time. So I think as and when that comes out, we will have to have a look at the potential implications. But obviously, all the agreements that we enter into are agreements with developers, and there is an reason for that. But that does then obviously reflect very positively in the performance that we have. A quick thing, members may identify the rather significant drop in fee income between Q1 and Q2. We did check that. I think that that is essentially down to an awful lot of majors coming in, particularly in June, actually around the Northfleet area. So we then ended up having quite a lot of income through Q1. Income has picked up through Q2. And there is also, just to flip back slightly, 3.4, we've added in just a small reference this time just to do a bit of enforcement activity. Our level of sort of enforcement isn't significant. We do an awful lot of investigations and work to find solutions without necessarily serving notices, but we have been serving some bits and bobs recently. So we thought that was worthwhile identifying. Happy to take any questions.
I'm interested. What sort of enforcement do you have to go for?
Yeah, yeah.
I can understand where we have lots of it, but
It's sort of similar, I suppose, sort of similar things, but just obviously on a much smaller scale. We were typically getting, at one point, we were getting quite a few concerns raised by residents around noise and dust disturbances, some of the larger scale developments and how they were impacting on new residents. I think it's probably fair to say over the last 6 to 9 months, we've been having more householder complaints where someone a new resident may be making some small scale change to their property, and the neighbours would have their concerns around that. The enforcement notice that was served relates to parking and the garage conversion. Is that right? So there was a garage conversion on one of the development sites. There's a condition that should require it to be parking. We were concerned that by removing that parking space, we'd have undue pressure on the highway, and that was in relation to. Yes, the PCN, Michael, I can't remember what that related to. Do you recall? It may have been something.
it was interesting because in reading this, there was a number of things that say you must get permission before you start adapting garages and putting doors on the front. Some of them are just lean-to. We've seen them, people put a garage door on what is supposed to be an open access. I'm not sure that we've been.
Well, this particular case was a garage, a proper garage that was then being used for non-parking purposes, that had been converted. So that was concluded to then be contrary to the condition that was imposed. And we obviously do so much work around sustainable travel and really try to think about, well, what is the appropriate level of parking. Some of the development sites historically we've concluded had quite a lot of over provision in the early days. Other ones we've been a little bit more comfortable, they've been at the right level, so we're a little bit more keen to make sure that that right level is maintained.
You'll forgive me, Chair, but under delegated, which is the next thing, I noticed there were 2 items there where people have converted their garages into habitable space. I hate that, and we have real issues with it. People doing that in places like English Park, because a lot of them don't use garages for cars; they use it for storage or habitable space, and the trouble is they've still got 3 cars.
Never left the road. No, anybody else on that? I was just going to ask one thing on the enforcement notice.
Yes.
Has it been appealed?
It hasn't. The compliance period runs until January, so we will see what happens with that. Yes.
Well, with interest.
Yes.
Yes. Any other points on the? I think officers are to be congratulated for the performance figures, because there aren't very many local authorities, which I know that quite a large proportion are by agreement. 2.4, you've still got 100% on either agreed or within the statutory time limit. So well done, and thank you very much for that. Right, let's go on to delegated items report. Item 8.
Yeah, so this covers the period July to November. So there's 55 decisions listed, decisions that are carried out under delegated powers. As I mentioned to Councillor Croxton earlier, apologies if some of the ward information around some of the development sites is a little out of date. Some of the ward names changed in May, and some of those that haven't been updated. So references to things like Northfleet North and South should now be Northfleet and Springhead and Rosherville. Correct that for the next report, Chair. But as usual, happy to take any particular questions on those decisions.
So this report's for noting.
It is those.
Minor points were the ones I raised earlier.
Yeah, I don't exactly know where those locations were quickly, but just to give you a bit of information, when we did our sustainable travel strategy, we had a look at parking, across the area, and for example, there are areas around Edsby Green where the surveys were showing us that actually there was a bit of an over provision there, because the way in which the housing typologist provided a garage and quite a generous driveway outside, the removal of that garage that didn't really cause a problem. It felt as though Springhead Park, for example, was really appropriate. All of the, it didn't feel like there was a massive problem. It didn't feel like there was a massive over provision. So what we do is when those come forward, we then have a look at them. Well, what else is left? And then look at that then against the standard.
That's fine, as long as we don't use it as a precedent.
Yeah,
they did it, so we want to do it.
Sure.
And if you're taking these all into consideration as the immediate surrounding, how it fits in, then it's fine.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, the enforcement notice at the Springhead Park property was a 4-bed house, was losing all of its parking, whereas a lot of the FC Green properties have still had 3 spaces, even though they might have converted a garage. So quite extremes. But
Okay, that's fine, thank you.
just a quick one on the PCN. So the PCN, I've just done a bit of research. It was for a householder in Castle Hill that they'd done some works. We were trying to get an application to regularise it. They built a wall at the front. There was some complaints that it was blocking visibility because it was on a corner, sort of highways visibility. So the PCN was effective in getting the response and then actually ultimately generating an application that we're due to approve on the basis of them reducing the height of the wall to address that issue. So that was a bit of a tactic to engage with.
That's the idea of it, to get it, so you don't have to take enforcement action, then something happens, which is good. Can I just ask, I don't want to delay matters, but there's one of the delegated items was North Fleet Embankment West, Reserve Matters approval, can't tell you the page number.
Yeah, I can. I think it's page 7 on the report.
It's the heritage. That's quite a great heritage park and playing pitch, and that is close to the area where I think we approve Reserve Matters, is it?
It is, yes. So this is part of a wider North Fleet Embankment West site. Part of the scheme is coming forward by Bellway as part of Harbour Village. There is Heritage Park, Bevans Park coming forward for open space there.
And that's been approved.
It has been approved, yeah. So there's been some various different heritage interpretation components of that, and the playing pitch will then be associated with the school. So yeah, good bit of infrastructure, I think, to get in.
Well, we were promised that when they were putting forward their other schemes. So yes. I'm glad to hear it's happened.
And a bridge connection between the communities as well, which is a key element of connecting the space.
And that. Right. Any other points?
Yeah, there's a very large number of applications here, but they're all approved. Sometimes with conditions, sometimes just a discharge with condition. Oh, it's probably an unfair challenge. I don't know. Are we being robust enough? How often do we go back to applicants and require amendments? The MPPF encourages, doesn't it? Well, that states directs actually that one should secure permissions wherever possible. But it just strikes me there's a large number here, and every single one is approved. And perhaps I just don't have the detail as to what's sort of gone on to support those approvals.
I think we're always trying to be really proactive, and we prefer, sometimes applications take a little bit longer and we get extension of time because we always want to prefer to approve something and get it right rather than end up with appeals, etc. We've had a few cases, maybe more householders, where things haven't been right and it's been withdrawn prior to a decision being made. It was about to issue the other week that was going to go for a huge extension. The applicant decided to withdraw it rather than take the refusal. But generally, we do try and agree. I mean, a lot of the household applications we get would be permitted development if the PD rights hadn't been removed. So a lot of times they come in a 3-metre extension. It's fine from the start. A lot of the other approvals will relate to conditions, which we try and sort of get it right because there's not really any value in refusing them prematurely. So it's generally trying to work with developers to get them right, which is why. So I think we are robust and there is a lot of engagement with developers to get to the position where we can approve rather than just approving to get them off the desk. That's certainly never the case.
I didn't say that. So are permitted development rights often removed then within the Ebbsfleet?
So the outline permissions for the Ebbsfleet Green and the Eastern Quarry site removed almost every PD right in terms of extensions to properties.
It allows us to create a more uniform and appropriate in the garden.
But also explains this actually, because I would say it was unusual. But no, I can see if the permitted development rights are removed in many instances within Ebbsfleet, then yes, of course you get many more applications of a modest nature that probably ought to just.
And I think that we offer the free pre-app service as well with homeowners, which often they'll take up. So we'll iron out some issues before, and then the application comes in, and it's.
Well, I would like the message to go that certainly what I would expect, that people would seek to negotiate with officers to have a satisfactory scheme. That's the right way to do it. We don't want a confrontational approach, but if people don't listen to officers, then we will back officers. But the idea should be to try and get it right.
Mm.
And you're only presenting or approving under delegated powers applications which have been got right. And if you think they're not right, we'll back you up.
Yeah, and there's been a few cases where we have refused things and then it's been appealed, and we've actually, two cases, a takeaway, changing from a pub to a takeaway, and then a large dormer window in Castle Hill. So they were refused, and we won the appeals on them as well. So that kind of reinforced our position that they were the right ones to refuse.
Takeaway. It's really.
The Georgian Dragon in Swansea.
Well done.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, having been on the receiving end, I can confirm that, you know, we've had quite a lot of conversations with them.
Oh, we made you work for yours, didn't you?
You did. They did actually. Yeah, we had an extension and the time. So yes, it was definitely, it felt robust from our
To
point
try
of
and
view.
get the right answer.
Yeah, exactly. It was definitely not on a nod, but that was fine.
Anything else from anybody? No. Well, thank you very much. That leads the meeting. And, thank you. And so for everybody who's online, goodbye and have a happy Christmas when we get there.
Yes.
Very.
Oh, Simon.